Thank y'all for being here this morning. Kicking off Drupal Camp Chattanooga, my first camp, so I'm really excited. Today we're going to be talking about developing the product management mindset and practice in government. Okay? So here's just a quick agenda, quick intro, session overview. We're going to talk about GovHub as a product and how we shifted left to that product mindset. Agile product development, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, but we'll talk a little bit about our process and get into some specifics. And talk about the constituent-driven roadmaps that we develop and how this product mindset has allowed us to focus on constituent-driven roadmaps. And why Drupal is the best solution for government and really any public sector organization. And then we'll get into some Q&A and open discussion. So, today I want to take you guys on a little journey of how our team evolved from being a project-oriented to more product-oriented. That's really not prevalent in the government space. We don't really think about our services as products, but we should. We should think about the things that we're putting out there for the constituents and keeping them in mind in their user experience. A lot of time when people are interfacing with the government, it's not the best or most exciting experience. You're always going to have to get a driver's license. You might want to get a business license. And we kind of just put those services out there and never refine them or examine them or make them better. You have to come to us for a driver's license. What else are you going to do? But today we're going to examine how our team at the Georgia Technology Authority shifted to treating our Drupal-based platform as a product and how we grew to evolve our mindset to become a digital service and how that shift in the mindset expanded our offering as an organization and well as how our team grew and created peripheral support for that product. So some of the lessons for today, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about how we transition from a project mindset to a product mindset, how we apply our agile development strategies on our very lean team, because again, we do work for the state. Some of the best practices for prioritizing features based on the constituent needs and our customer needs too, but we've kind of trained our customers to put the constituent first and not treat their website like their personal billboard. And how some of Drupal's built-in capabilities solve very common government web challenges. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Jasmine Epps. I am now the director and product owner of GovHub, which is a Drupal-based web publishing solution that powers a little over 90 state agency websites at this point. When I started on the team, I was a QA analyst back in 2014 and kind of morphed into this role when it became vacant. My boss, Nikhil Deshpande, you may be familiar with him. He's very active in the Drupal community. Created this role for me, and so I've taken over as the product owner. But during that time, I had a front row seat to kind of the planning and evolution of what we used to call the platform, and didn't really have a name back then, during our migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and how that was the catalyst for us to be able to think about our platform as a product. So just a few stats. We have about 600 registered content editors across our 90 websites. We get about 45 million site visits a month and 184 million page views a month. And of those page views, 49 million of those are engaged sessions. So those are sessions where there is a conversion happening or the session lasts longer than 10 seconds. And I like that stat because a lot of our engaged sessions start at Google. So that means our content is structured in such a way that Google is able to get people exactly where they need to be. People typically don't go straight to the Department of Driver Services, especially if you're new to Georgia. We don't have DMV. We have DDS. And so they're going to look up DMV, right? But our content is structured in such a way that if people are like, I need a driver's license in Georgia, they get to where they need to be and start that engaged session. So just a few stats there. And so now I want to start you on the journey. And I don't know if you all ever driven in Atlanta, but this is what it looks like every day. What I read recently is that we don't have a rush hour. We have just rush all day, every day. On my way here from Atlanta last night at 7:30, 75 North looked like that. At 7:30 at night. I'm like, what is happening? Why? And luckily the GPS, I don't know how they knew we had the Peach Pass Express Lane thing, but it put us in the Peach Pass Lane and we got past all that. But I show you this to kind of create the analogy of how our software development lifecycle resembled in the beginning before we shifted to this product mindset. It was like rush hour traffic with one little lane open, and that rush hour full of lanes was our backlog, and that one little lane was our ability to squeak out a few feature developments as best we could. We had a very lean team. It was one product manager, one lead engineer, and me, the QA analyst. Okay. And so this is what our legacy software development lifecycle looked like. I don't expect you to be able to see that, but I just want you to see how there's a lot of cycling going on at the end of that. We would start with just the product owner and the lead engineer performing some light backlog refinement. During this time, we had a development partner, third-party company, agency we were working with, but they were almost like a black box. Like, we kind of relied heavily on them to lead the product, and they would do their own development, and then we kind of meet up at the end of the sprint. And I would try to QA their work. There wasn't a whole lot of test instructions for me. I had to ask a whole lot of questions. And so there was a lot of looping going on at the end. And we were focusing more on coming up with the process of when there was a bug introduced, what do we do, rather than trying to prevent the bugs to begin with. And so, and we also only had really a dev environment that the third party agency was doing their development on, and I was testing everything in staging. Okay, so I already got rid of one environment where I could ensure that things weren't going to break, and once it got to staging, if it broke, had to go back to dev, and it was just a whole very super convoluted process. And so the legacy lifecycle was very much shifted right, if you will. And there was a bunch of scrambling at the end of the sprint to make sure that QA was completed. So what was the problem with that for the most part? Like I said, end of sprint crunch. Most of the QA in took place at the very end of our 2-week sprints. And that is if we even kept up with our 2-week sprint schedule. It was sometimes like, okay, well, we can't push this out. There's too many bugs. We got to push the sprint out another week or what have you. So we had a very inconsistent release schedule. And so sprint velocity lagged. Like, it was just really no direction. And then it was like whack-a-mole with the bug remediation. We didn't know where the bugs were introduced. It was very difficult to identify which piece of code actually introduced the bug. And it really just prolonged our feature development. Our product was stagnant. We were just constantly playing catch up with fixing it rather than actually innovating and growing and scaling the product. And then we were on Drupal 7. Did I mention that? We were on Drupal 7, and I know maybe a lot of you are dealing with migrating from Drupal 7 still right now. You are on a deadline, guys. It's almost up. But you know that Drupal 7 functioned significantly different from subsequent releases. And so we didn't really have a content governance kind of model, and agencies were able to find workarounds for things. And so it was really hard to even just account for what the agencies were doing and fixing those things. So lots of problems with our legacy process. So this was me, typically at the end of each sprint, burnt out and hoping that I didn't break the entire platform and bring the whole state to a screeching halt. And it was very stressful. I will say it wasn't as stressful as when I worked in the private sector and I was doing this. I started out working at Verizon, and we would have releases, and I was doing QA there. And one night, so we start the release at 11 o'clock at night. It was one night the release went so long, someone had to get off to take their kid to school. I was like, this can't be life. So to the government I went. But yes, this is typically what I look like at the end of a sprint. And so these were the famous last words before the dread set in. We need to move, at the time, 80 plus websites from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. And while already experiencing difficulties with our software development lifecycle process, we were faced with having to completely refactor our platforms. Drupal 7 was different from Drupal 8. And we had to move all those sites as the end-of-life support for Drupal 7 approach. Now, they've extended that 20 times since then. So excuse me, at the time, we were kind of, freaking out. But it looks like we had a lot more time than we anticipated. So, what does it mean to have a product mindset? It means focusing on delivering value to users and continuously improving a product based on feedback, data, and market needs. It involves thinking beyond just completing tasks or projects and instead considering the long-term success, scalability, and usability of the product. And we knew since this wasn't going to be a lift and shift, that we could not only reconsider how we delivered the product, but how we functioned as a team. And that became a really big turning point in our team. And I feel like our success as far as gaining the buy-in from the 90 plus agencies that we worked with. They don't have to come to us. The Georgia Technology exists as a government mandate. Agencies can go out in the private sector and hire an agency to build their website. They don't have to come to us. So the fact that we've been able to garner the trust and the respect from these state agencies is attributed to this shift in our delivery of this product. And so the user-centric thinking of this prioritizes the needs of the users when making decisions. So as we migrated from Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, it gave us opportunity to examine our user base, which included our content editors and the maintainers at the agencies who, this isn't like their main job. They're not like developers, like this was just kind of like, okay, I want you to also add content to the site on top of your other job or functions at the agency. So, we got the opportunity to go on a listening tour and talk to people from the top of the state to the bottom, talk to our users as well as citizens, to develop color palettes that, like I said, sometimes when you're interacting with the government, it's not the most pleasant experience. Like, for instance, people have to go on the Georgia Bureau of Investigation site and report a loved one missing, things like that, considering all the scenarios in which someone would have to interact with us. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of insight from that. And we'll talk more about some of those strategies later. But the user-centric thinking helps decision making by reducing the subjectivity, right? You get data, hard data, and that is our guiding light. And I think that's another reason why the agencies like working with us, because it's not based on how we feel. Look at the data. A lot of people visit your site from a phone. So don't worry about that big picture of your commissioner on the home page. No one cares, okay? Yeah, like commissioner, like who is this? So we use that data and making customer and constituent first data-backed decisions. And a product mindset also encourages you to use, analytics, user testing, and feedback loops to optimize the service. So, the traceability of like why we did these things was important. Mm-hmm. And our developers' decision-making got faster. Again, they felt empowered to make decisions because we have this empirical data to say this is why we're doing it. Regardless of what we feel like or what we think, this is the best user experience based on data. And continuous improvement over time. Many government projects focus on launching a service and it's just one and done. You put it out there and you never look at it again. And, when I started as a QA analyst, all the testing was manual and there was no automation. There's no automated regression testing even. And a lot of the work I did was in like a spreadsheet, right? And so it's kind of hard to see your impact over time. Like, am I actually like helping the product grow? Am I helping it scale? There was no data on that side either. It was just me putting test cases in a spreadsheet, checking a box, and moving on, right? And so over time, we saw the need for more technology, more automation, more skilled developers, and more project managers. So a product mindset helps you focus on asking the questions if we're actually doing the work. Are we really focusing on outcomes, or are we just putting out a product because the government or the governor told us to, right? And a part of that shift in our mindset was shifting left. So what does that mean? Shifting left means moving really important steps to the beginning of the process. So I showed you earlier how we were doing a bunch of stuff at the end, a bunch of scrambling at the end. And that's because we weren't taking the time in the beginning to really examine what we were trying to do. We weren't setting any kind of goals. We just weren't getting all of the stakeholder sign-off that we needed. And again, there was no roadmap, essentially. So this is shifting left just means moving steps like backlog refinement and stakeholder sign-off. Again, backlog refinement, going back to when I worked at Verizon, we were trying to figure out if there was acceptance criteria on the call during the release in the middle of the night. Like, is this how it's supposed to work, y'all? Does this mean that it's done? And so it was a mess. So it wasn't that bad in this process working for GTA. But again, it just was no growth. It was no scaling of this product whatsoever. And so we started to have a more Scrum-like Agile product development process where we would start with backlog refinement. We use Jira. Probably familiar with Atlassian tools. We use Jira, where we have clear acceptance criteria, okay? We talk about what does it mean for this ticket to be complete. So when we pass it off to a developer, there's no question whatsoever about what needs to happen. And so we start with backlog refinement internally first to set all of the stakeholder business, user testing, accessibility, all of the acceptance criteria that we need from our side. And then we meet with our development partners, who now is Lullaby. We work with Lullaby. And we meet with their developers for them to ask questions. Okay, well, what about this and what about that? Because they have way more intimate knowledge of a lot of the code that powers GovHub, so they can ask more questions about what needs to happen. So we do that backlog refinement with them. And then after the issues are scored, we actually came up with, have you heard of RICE scoring? A reach, impact, what does this see? I can't even think right now. E is effort. But we put the P in the front for politics. Confidence. C is confidence. So we put the P in the front for politics because we do work in government. So sometimes if something comes down the line and because the governor says so, the score is higher. So we have to include that piece. And so we score each issue. We give it a price score, and we bring it to sprint planning. So we kind of have like how long the tickets are going to take and the amount of effort and stuff like that. And we have a defined sprint checklist too. So every time we come to sprint planning, we have a checklist we go through. So we make sure we follow the same exact process every time, and that helps with reporting like sprint velocity and making sure that we're delivering on the goals that we actually set for each sprint. And then we're able to assess the impact of the issues based on our roadmap. So we meet weekly, but probably monthly during those weekly meetings, we review the roadmap. So these are the things that we have planned. Are we prioritizing issues to meet the goals on the roadmap that we've established. We prioritize things based on, okay, what is the level of effort to deliver this feature? How important is it to get this feature out by a certain time? Building product roadmaps, and a lot of those things are influenced by the constituent needs, maybe because we need to move to Drupal 11 because Drupal 10 end of life is coming up, deadlines and things of that nature. So we examine the roadmap to make sure that we are delivering value in each of these sprints. We want to have something that is customer facing go out in each of these sprints. A lot of stuff is infrastructure that the customers don't see. It benefits them, but they don't see it. But we definitely want to make sure that we're showing the value add in every sprint as well. And then we have integrated feedback in our development lifecycle. So, like I said, we have customer-facing release notes that we put out each sprint, or at the end of each sprint, so that the customers see what we're doing and have the opportunity to comment on those things. And we also incorporate retrospectives at the end of each sprint, so the developers can say, okay, this sprint stuff was a little wonky, maybe next sprint let's try this. That's kind of what how we came up with our sprint planning checklist out of a retro, for example, because we were getting the sprint planning meeting and be like, oh, we forgot to add the effort on this. Oh, we forgot to assign this before the sprint was over, so the developer wasn't really totally aware of their workload. They're developers at Lullaby. We're not their only customers. We're not the only project that these devs are working on. They need to be able to plan, their workload. So just little things like that can improve your Agile product development. So again, after we shifted left, as you can see, more stuff happening at the beginning. We had, like I mentioned, more detailed backlog refinement at the beginning. And this is where we also introduced more automated testing. So I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with Tugboat. I saw somebody with my favorite Tugboat shirt on. Tugboat was a game changer for us. It allows you to test each pull request on its own instance of your environment. That's an exact copy of your production environment, so that you test that one PR in isolation. And then once it passes QA, we merged all the PRs on one Tugboat and tested everything on Tugboat. So that way we barely have to do any testing on staging. Like, we know before it goes to staging whether or not it's broken. And rarely are we introducing bugs now. So we can catch that stuff really early on Tugboat, and we don't have to wait until all the code is merged to test as the developers complete each issue, right? We can test it on Tugboat, say this one's good to go, and once everything's good to go, we will put it on one Tugboat with all the PRs merged. We have automated BHAT tests, which we're actually migrating to Playwright right now. Playwright apparently is going to save us a little bit extra, a few seconds on each test, and it also integrates visual regression, which Tugboat does as well, but Playwright gives us that extra layer of visual regression. Visual regression is awesome. It shows us a snapshot between the environments and things that are changing, and we create these thresholds to say if it's a certain percentage difference, let's take a look at it. It may be that we changed something on the interface and that it needed to change, but we're able to catch that stuff in case it's not. So as you can see, we've shifted left significantly, and the rest of the sprint is pretty smooth. And again, moving to this product mindset allows us to focus more on constituent-driven roadmaps. So some of the strategies that we use to get constituent feedback and address their needs now that our sprints aren't so chaotic are surveys, analytics, direct feedback. We have a support desk that we've established where people can just say, hey, we have this one customer, we love her so much, she sends us a lot of stream of consciousness tickets, like, I was just thinking, and it would be really cool if, and I'm just like, we have to, let's take a beat, y'all, and try to decipher exactly what she's telling us. But we love her feedback. She's one of our favorite customers because she's, we call her a power user. And she finds all the things. Like, she will find all of the little random corners of GovHub and tell us exactly, like, you know, what she thinks and how it should work. And we also have an advisory committee. So advisory committee are made up of our customers. We try to cycle out new people because, like I said, we have 600 content editors, and we want to get a nice sample size of all the users, not just power users, not just users at Department of Revenue and Department of Labor, but, you know, users at Lake Lanier, their little 5-page website, you know, and just, you know, get everyone's feedback. And I mentioned earlier that we did a listening tour for when we went from the platform to GovHub. And so right now we're actually in the middle of building out a new iteration of GovHub, because GovHub was created in 2019 and we haven't really changed it since. We got a new theme, but we want to see what lessons we've learned from when we created it to now. You know, the code has been out there, the customer's been using it, so, you know, what can we do better? There's so much technology now, AI, you know, we made all of our websites accessible back in 2015, but now it's a state mandate and they have to have everything accessible by next June, which the code is fine, but now they have to focus on their content. And so what are ways that we can help you with that? Some of these agencies have 5,000 PDFs. And so we're working with actually Code for America to help them figure out how to remediate some of these PDFs, which we can't help you actually do the remediation, but we can give you the guidance. And that's using a little bit of AI. Is looking at their PDFs and saying, okay, this one you need to like do a couple things. This one you can just archive, whatever. But we are in the middle of creating a new iteration of GovHub, and so we're doing another listening tour, which just concluded last week actually, and we hired a third-party company to do that. And the reason why that may be useful is because customers may feel more comfortable talking to the third-party company and telling them things rather than us. You know, maybe they don't want to hurt our feelings or something like that, and you know, because we like I said, we've grown really close to our customers, and so getting a third party to come in and ask questions can reveal a lot of things that users may not want to talk to you about. And we use that research to kind of broadly understand their patterns. Like, what are some things that you've done that outside of GovHub that you wish were inside of GovHub? What are some workflows you've come up with that maybe we can move into GovHub, like their content moderation? We have a lot of roles on GovHub, one being a reviewer role, where all you can do is just look at the content. You can't publish, you can't create. But that reviewer role is really important for some agencies because they have a lot of subject matter experts that have to sign off on content, but they don't necessarily, that's not their job to create the content, right? So maybe we can bring some of those processes into GovHub and help that reviewer process. And we also have more focused discussions with the advisory committee to answer specific questions and get answers to our hypotheses. And that's where we're like, okay, this is something that we definitely know we want to do. What do y'all think? You know, give me your feedback on this specific thing. So we try to do a good job of balancing government agency requests with the broader constituent needs. And that's essential. So that leads to features that serve both the agency customers and the citizens of Georgia. And leading with this site is for the constituency helps the customers in their decision making as well. And so why is Drupal the best solution for this? Honestly, the transparency of the open source community that Drupal brings helps us establish that trust with our users and our constituency. So that's one of the challenges of working with government sites, is having those strict regulatory requirements and constantly being attacked. So we get confused with the country, Georgia, a lot, and we get tons of attacks. And luckily, a lot of what Drupal offers from a security standpoint helps us with those things. And there's a very robust community of hosting companies like Pantheon and Acquia who are FedRAMP, and they have all those security layers in place. Cloudflare is the firewall. We have a WAF, a web application firewall that we use that blocks a lot of those attacks. So, and our lead engineer, Jenna, I don't know if you may know her, she monitors that for any weirdness. And then having a bunch of agencies and having to monitor like access and all those things. Drupal helps with that, with the granular permission controls and the roles. We have it to where if you haven't been active for a while, we deactivate your account. You know, people come and go out of the government a lot, and the agency might not write to us and say, this person's gone now, but we can take care of that really easily with Drupal. You know, the Drupal community constantly updating modules and creating patches uniquely enables Drupal to maintain the level of security needed for government. We actually also contribute to some modules. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of type tray, the type tray module. It helps you like really beautifully display your content types, and it helps our agencies decide on which content type to use for whatever they're trying to make. So look up type tray, that's one of ours. You know, Drupal is built to address security with, like I mentioned, the role-based access, the granular permissions management, and even has government-specific distributions like GovCMS. So, and another reason why Drupal is the best solution for government solutions is the content management aspect of it. Obviously, it's a content management system. Our challenges, which a lot of government and public spaces, education, that's one space that faces us a lot. There's a bunch of different departments. They all want their own look and feel. They all want their own control of everything. And that can be a challenge. And trying to ensure that all of them are following accessibility standards and the governance and the auditing of the content. And you need to be able to publish quickly in a crisis, like COVID. COVID was one of those times where a lot of agencies were needing to put up dashboards, and you know they were getting things from other companies to display data related to COVID and unemployment or COVID cases and things like that. And so having the flexibility to publish those things quickly is crucial in the government space. And Drupal is a good solution for that. It allows us to maintain that content governance. It allows everyone to be able to control their content, but we control the code and the accessibility and making sure that they are compliant in those areas. But it also lets them feel like they have some sort of control over their site and the uniqueness of it. We offer 7 different color palettes, and that helps, you know, with the look and feel and helping them, you know, feel a little unique. And tons of content types and ways to display information that really does give them each their own unique look and feel. But it also allows us to maintain the brand continuity across all the websites for the constituents experience. So they know that when they come to one of our sites, they're in the right place. They see the hat at the top. This is a state of Georgia government website. You are in the right place. How do you know? Like all those things. This is a .gov and not a .org. You know, you got to jump through a few more hoops to get a .gov. So you are safe and your information is safe here. And, you know, it allows accessibility to not be a concern for our content editors because we handle all of that with our multi-site install. So bringing it all together, you know, we chose to treat GovHub as a product, creating a well-oiled machine of maintainable processes and standards so that we could focus more on continuous improvement. We now had time to listen to our users and constituents and create a tool that was made to serve them better. Drupal's flexibility, coupled with a product management mindset, empowers government teams to serve citizens better, faster, and more securely. And a product mindset is essentially fosters sustainable impact, adaptability, and long-term growth. So what I want you to take away today is that, again, a product mindset helps teams be sustainable and scalable digital experiences that evolve based on user needs. Adapting the shift left methodology of product development allows teams to deliver faster, and focus more on better experiences. A well-structured governance model plus user-driven feedback loops keep product development on track. And Drupal's flexibility plus strong security makes it the best CMS for government digital platforms. What is my time? Do you guys have any questions? Yeah.
The whole shift left thing, did you run into people or parts of the large organization that were resistant to that shift? Or were they all like, yes, this makes sense, let's do it?
That's a great question. I'm going to repeat your question for the recorder. The question was, did we experience any pushback from the broader organization when we chose to shift left? So my department, the Office of Digital Services, this little team, we had no pushback. You know, we were like, this is what we're doing. But our broader agency, the Georgia Technology Authority, we were kind of siloed, and they were kind of doing their own thing with their teams and how they interacted with customers. And then when we got new leadership recently, she saw how our team was working and how state agencies really liked working with us, and is trying to spread that across the rest of the organization. So we didn't really get any pushback. Our agency customers really embraced our leadership or our advice and really looked to us for any of the things they wanted to do with their content. And it was received very well from our team. Our team grew as a result. It was literally one product owner, a QA, and me, and our lead dev. And now we've grown to like an outreach team. We have content managers like that and strategists that help the agencies with their content and the best ways to display it. Like, this really expanded our team. So it was very, very good shift. Yes.
So just logistically, when you're talking about Drupal and you have 90 agencies, like each agency has its own instance and you're pushing out one, like the changes every week to all 90?
Yes. So the question is like, logistically, how do we manage the 90 websites and the delivery? Yes, so they each have their own database and they are in control of their own content. And we manage the code base. It's one single code base, yes. So we, like I mentioned, we made all our sites accessible back in 2015. We were probably one of the first states to do so. And so we've just maintained accessibility compliance ever since then. So they don't have to worry about the state mandate that's coming down next June. They just have to get all those PDFs in order, which, God bless them, it's going to be a task.
So is GovHub, the infrastructures are basically a set of Drupal sites that the state essentially hosts and manages the content under a unified framework?
Yes, so our content model for each site is the same. They all have the same content types. They all have the same, like, depending on what their role is, like they'll write to us, we need this person to be an editor, we need this person to be a reviewer or a creator or whatever. We have different roles and they're defined. But yeah, they essentially control their content. They can publish whenever they want, but we are on a consistent release schedule, and we, every 2 weeks we publish the release notes and they know what's happening. Yeah, does that answer the question? Okay. Yeah, so yeah, it's one single code base and they maintain their content. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're basically a SaaS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially. Yeah, absolutely. They used to call us the poets because we were like the creative team of the agency, they build websites and they, doing design and stuff like that. But, I really look at us as like a digital agency for the state.
Right.
And we just charge significantly less, which hopefully we can change that. But, we are not directly funded by tax dollars like the agencies pay us. We have to generate our own income. And so we are still mindful of being good stewards of those tax dollars. A lot of stuff we use is open source or free. I do want to plug our design system. We have a design system at orchard.georgia.gov. It's free You can use it to start your Drupal projects. It's HTML, CSS, so it's not software. It's software agnostic. You can use it for anything. You can use it for just a S3 bucket site, or you can use it for your Drupal. We're working on building an NPM package for it, so you can download it to whatever project that you're working on. So that's the next step in the roadmap for that product. But yeah, so orchard.georgia.gov is our design system, and so we want to keep creating stuff like that agencies can use, anyone can use really. We also have gamified our analytics. So you can go to analytics.georgia.gov and you can see the analytics of all of our 90 sites, the page views, it's called a DCI score, basically from Site Improve. They get, or GAP score, excuse me, it's called a GAP score, Georgia Analytics Program score. They have basically, they treat it like a scoreboard, like as far as like their score, and it's taking into account their SEO, you know, their accessibility to where they, you know, fix their own content for accessibility. All kinds of analytics that builds this score, and it comes from Site Improve, and we have just used their API to display it in a way that's like a scoreboard, basically. And they'll hit us up all the time in our support, like, our score went down 0.1 points, how do we fix it? And so we love it. And so it just helps them really pay attention to their content as well and try to deliver quality. Okay. Any other questions?
So a couple of comments.
Yeah.
One is just, well, it's a move to a product orientation.
Yeah.
Really, you move to a customer end user orientation.
Yeah, totally.
And making sure that product was really tailored to what they needed.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that you deployed this platform that really puts them in control and done it in a standardized way and made it more efficient and flexible is very cool. That's a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Really. And then the other thing that I think is interesting about it is it's some great kind of technology management insights. But there's really important insights built into this that any leader should understand. And that kind of brings me to my questions.
Yeah.
Do you think the state leadership has a clue, or is it just kind of like their website's there and they're working, and so they're not really thinking about it or saying, well, what can we gather from this? And because it seems to me that a lot of the insights that you guys got for technology should be applied to public services overall.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, unfortunately, one of our state agencies made the John Oliver show. I don't know if y'all watched that. Yeah, I think it made it twice, but the most recent time it made it, it was basically the Georgia Gateway program. It's basically our state's Medicaid, right? We were used as a bad example of how to roll out Medicaid. Now, we don't have any control over the state agencies and their programs, right? That was I guess Department of Human Services, I believe, whatever agency is over the Medicaid. We have their website, which they click a link and they go off to the gateway, which is an application that they are in control of, right? But the constituent don't know that. So I'm watching John Oliver and they're showing my website and I'm like, okay, this is really bad PR, guys. But you're right. Like, and in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, in part of that segment, they said they spent like $86 million and like 2/3 of that went to consultants, and it's a bad experience. How? That was just like tons of money that I feel like if we had some sort of influence in, maybe we could have saved tons of money and made the experience better. But then you start to think about government, and maybe that was by design that people can't really access this Medicaid, you know, because people have incentives to not give out this money, right? But yes, I think that from a technology standpoint, we try to lead with that and lead with thinking about the constituent. But we just don't have, even though we're called the Georgia Technology Authority, we don't have much authority. We kind of just set standards and guidelines that are publicly available for the agencies to follow for their projects that they go off and hire whoever to do. But they don't. But those companies are just going to take that $86 million and do what they say. And if they don't consider that across all of their digital assets, then you can end up with bad PR on John O.
So where I thought you were going with that, John Oliver example was, you suddenly get a bunch of traffic and your infrastructure crashes.
I wish.
How do you handle your SLAs, among all 90 organizations?
Yeah.
And how do you handle that infrastructure? So, one agency gets tons of traffic.
Yeah. So the question was, how do we handle the infrastructure or the maybe if a bunch of sites or one site gets a bunch of traffic. So what actually happened after that is that this agency took Orchard, our design system, and redesigned the gateway. So when you would click off from their site originally, from our GovHub site, and go to the gateway, two totally different experiences. You are taken to a whole different, totally different site. After, I don't know if the John Oliver PR was any catalyst for that, but they redesigned that gateway and it looked a lot more like. And so we saw the attempt they were trying to make the user experience better. And once they did that, we did see a spike in the traffic on their site because people saw that this was easier to access now. We have a lot of load balancers with Cloudflare that handles those spikes in traffic. Of course, we get a lot of spikes during tax season on DOR. There's different parts of the year. A lot of traffic comes when the legislative session is going on and they put out a bunch of executive orders and people come and look at those things on the governor's site. So we do see some parts of the year where there's a bunch of spikes, and that's where the WAF comes into play. We have a lot of rules set up to handle those things, to be able to identify if these are bots, all coming from one IP address or something like that. So we have a lot of stuff monitoring our sites at all times. We pay a ton of money for this WAF. So that's the main way. And again, our lead architect, she monitors that WAF. She don't just like put it up and never look at it. So she'll report to us when we've seen spikes. It was another thing. Oh, I don't know if you guys got those spammy text messages from like your driver's license. Like, your driver's license is going to be suspended if you don't pay this. Yeah, so Georgia was getting hit with those things. I was getting them like every day. And we knew they were scams because it was saying DMV, right? We don't have DMV. We got DDS, okay? But people who are new to the state, they don't know, so they're freaking out. So during that time, we saw a huge spike on DDS's website. And DDS as a result, put out a statement on their homepage like, hey guys, this is a scam. Don't reply to that. We're never going to try to collect money through a text message. Don't click on links. But we saw a spike during that time. And our lead architect, she just alerted us to it. It didn't take our sites down. I can't even, over the decade I've been working, I can only remember maybe once our sites went down for like 5 minutes. And I think it was before we got this WAF. So yeah, like I can't even remember a time that it was severe. Our platform was severely impacted by that. But like I said, we get DDoS attacks a lot because they think we're the country Georgia. So I don't know what's going on over there. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you guys. I think we went over a little bit. Yeah. Thank you. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I'll put up my barcode. You guys can scan it real quick. And I'll cut this recording off now.